Mid-Michigan area storytellers Tellabration. My name's Jean Boley, and I'm actually not from here. So, but I'm honored to be invited to be a guest teller. And I hope you're all comfortable and you're ready to hear some wonderful stories. Once, there was a woodcutter. He got up one morning and he took his axe and went out from his small home in his small village to go find some firewood for the fires in his home. As he walked, he had to go quite a ways because all the trees close to his house had all been cut down already. So he walked down to the river, and then he walked along the river for miles until he saw a sight that delighted him, because there by the water was a large dead olive tree. And that tree would supply wood for his home fires for many days. So he climbed up into the tree with his axe, he sat down on the largest and most comfortable branch, and he began to chop the branch that he was sitting on. And as he was doing it, and thinking about all the firewood he would be able to take home, a priest from another village came by and looked at him and said, "Neighbor, what are you doing?" "I'm chopping wood. What does it look like I'm doing?" "Oh, neighbor, but is that really the best way? When you want to chop wood, you take your axe and you chop wood." "But neighbor, wouldn't it be better if you chopped down the tree first and then chopped it up into wood? The way you're doing it, the branch is going to break, you will fall down and you might be killed." "Pah! This will work just fine." And since he obviously wasn't going to pay any attention, the priest went on his way. And the woodcutter continued chopping, thinking about how foolish that priest was, when all of a sudden, the branch did indeed give away. He fell down on the ground and the branch landed on top of him. "Oh," he thought to himself, "the priest was right. He was right, he didn't know what he was talking about. He said the branch would break and I would fall down and I'd be killed. I must be dead." And since he was dead, he made no effort to get up, because you don't do that when you're dead. So there he lay under the tree with the branch on top of himself. And after a while, some friends and acquaintances of his came back, and when they saw him, they rushed over and they said, "Friend, friend," and they shook him and they rubbed his hands and patted his face, but he was dead, so he didn't do anything. And then they thought, "Oh, our friend is dead. The least we can do is carry him home to his own village." And so they picked him up and they began to walk off. But the man said, "Don't forget the axe." "Oh, we shouldn't forget the axe," said his friends, and they went back and they got the axe. Well, they went on for a while talking about the accident and how the man had went under the tree and the branch had fallen on top of him, and he opened his eyes and he said, "That's not the way it happened. I was sitting on the branch and the branch fell and I fell down on the ground and I was killed." "Oh," they said, and they continued carrying him along. They went along until they came to a fork in the road, and then the men began to argue about which was the best way. And the dead man sat up and he looked and he said, "Go that way. That's the way I came. It's shorter." And he lay back down and closed his eyes. So they went that way, and they went up over the hill, and sure enough, there was the village. Oh, he was right, they said. He always was an honest man. They carried him in to the village and to his house, and they laid him down on the ground inside his house. And they began to argue about what they should do. And while they were arguing, a dog came in and began to lick the woodcutter's face. And he said, "This is shameful. Is there no respect for the dead here?" And so they shooed the dog out and went back to their arguing. Well, finally, the woodcutter got tired of it all. He said, "You should go get my wife. She's probably down by the spring gossiping with all the other women." "Oh," they said. So somebody went to get his wife. And soon they could hear her coming, wailing and crying, followed by all the other women. And everybody crowded into the house and around the poor man. And she asked, of course, what happened. And he said, oh, his friend said, he was under a tree and he was cutting wood and the branch fell on him and killed him. And he sat up here, he opened his eyes again and he said, how many times do I have to tell you that's not the way it happened? I was sitting on the branch broke and I fell down and I was killed. Well, are you sure he's dead? Said his wife. Well, yes, of course he's dead. The branch fell, he fell out of the tree, of course he's dead. Well, how can he be talking? I'd never heard of a dead man who could talk. Well, then they began to argue about that. And disgusted with it all, the poor man got up, took his axe, and walked out of the house. Where are you going? Said his wife. To cut wood for the fire, said the woodcutter. And his friend said, oh, what a gentle and generous man. Even at a time like this, his first thought is for the comfort of his wife. And that's the story.
Mom was petite, blonde, with blue eyes. She never left the house without makeup, jewelry, and her hair perfectly coiffed in a stylish beehive. Now, a beehive was a popular hairstyle in the 1960s. It is constructed by backcombing and teasing up the hair and then smoothing it out into a hive shape. This wasn't the easiest hairstyle to do, at least not by yourself. The top and the sides were one thing, but the back was another. And as the first child up in the morning, it was my job to check the back of Mom's hair and eliminate any holes. And so with Mom's wire pit comb and skillful flips of the wrist, I carefully smoothed the back of Mom's hair out where her scalp showed. When I was done, she checked my work with her mirror, and if she was satisfied, I was given the warning. Okay, I'm going to spray. And I bolted out of the bathroom before aerosol fumes filled my lungs. Now, achieving the standard of appearance of the day took time. This was not only true for Mom, but for her 4 girls. How well she achieved this was a reflection on her, which is why we were late for church every Sunday. And since the 10 o'clock morning mass at St. Anthony's Parish was well attended, by the time we got there, the middle and the back seats were already filled. And with mass well underway, we were either ushered all the way up to the front of the church where we could sit together, or we were split up towards the back. And when it happened that we were split up and I sat behind Mom, I spent a considerable amount of time comparing Mom's beehive to the other ladies' hairdos and admiring my work. After Mass, as we drove out of the parking lot, my parents always had the same conversation. Should we go? Well, she's expecting us. Yeah, but do you want to go? My sisters and I were in the back seat. Karen, the oldest, piped in, I want to go to Grandma's. Please, can we go? I held my breath and watched as Mom picked at the skin on the side of her thumb. My younger sisters joined Karen. Yeah, I'm hungry. Please, can we go? Please. Whether we went back home or to Grandma's, by the time we arrived, Mom was biting at the skin on the side of her thumb. Grandma waited for us in the living room. She had gone to earlier Mass. Her hair was done up, but she changed and was now wearing a seersucker duster with butterfly sleeves, knee-high pantyhose, and slippers. She sat in her carved oval-back chair, one hand on one knee, the other holding a cigarette. Karen, me, Jackie, and Catherine lined up. Grandma presented her cheek. Each of us gave her a kiss. And each of us received a Hollywood kiss in return. Mwah. We sat on the couch and we waited. Gus was in the kitchen. The oven door creaked open and closed. Lids were lifted off pots and put back on. And the house was filled with the smells of kielbasa, ham, and baked beans. Gus was at Grandma's every Sunday, and he came with Grandma to our house for our birthday parties and gatherings. Now, as a young man, Gus looked like a young Art Garfunkel, slight frame, receding hairline, and sweet brown eyes. But now, as an old man in his late 50s, he looked like the cartoon character Ziggy, round face, bald, white t-shirt, and black baggy pants. We watched Grandma put her cigarette out in the ashtray. "Gus, get me my ciggies!" Or she'd say, "Gus, get me a drink!" And always smiling, Gus came in the living room with a kitchen towel over his shoulder and fetched Grandma whatever she asked for. It wasn't long before the uncles and aunts and cousins arrived, and the house was filled with laughing and eating and drinking. My Grandpa Pete and Grandma separated when Mom and her brothers were in high school. "We're not divorced," Grandma would say. "We're legally separated." This distinction was important to her because under canon law in the Catholic Church, as long as she wasn't divorced, she could still receive Holy Communion at Mass. And she always qualified or clarified this. She always followed this clarification with, "Besides, I don't need a man. I can make it on my own." And this appeared to be true. She owned her own home, she drove a shiny red Monte Carlo, and she was a self-proclaimed big shot at Wurzburg's department store. But she wasn't without a man. There was always Gus. After dinner, the kids went down in the basement to play. Now, for my sisters and cousins, Grandma's basement was a magical place. But for me, the light bulbs reflecting off the dark paneling made me feel queasy, and it was just so loud that I soon found myself walking back up the creaky wooden stairs. When I got to the haze of smoke that hung 3/4 of the way up the stairs, I held my breath. At the top of the stairs, I opened the door into the kitchen. Streaks of gray and white smoke wrapped through the kitchen, the dining room, and into the living room where the adults were playing cards. "Can I go for a walk?" "Okay, but stay on the sidewalks." "I will." When I got back from my walks, my cousins were usually gone. Gus was starting the dishes. He used such hot water that the kitchen window steamed up, and he used so much dish soap, suds foamed up to his elbows. "Can I help you, Gus?" No, Ike, that's okay." But I took 2 dish towels from the drawer, one to hold the piping hot dishes, and the other for drying. And in the running water, gentle clinks of good silver and china, and a floating bubble or two, few words were spoken. But as sure as palm olive is tough on kielbasa grease and easy on your hands, as he put the last dishes in the dish rack, Gus always said, "Now, Ike, remember, take care of yourself because no one else will." "You always tell me that, Gus." "I know, Ike, but it's important." "Okay, Gus, I will." Once a month, Karen and I cleaned Grandma's house. She paid us 75 cents each. One Saturday, as I washed the round mirror that hung in her dining room, I saw our blue Buick drive up into the driveway. Mom had taken all of Grandma's curtains the night before. She spent the morning in our basement, washing and ironing. She looked so pretty in her white lace blouse and light blue bell-bottom jeans. Grandma watched from the living room as Mom took the clothes baskets out of the back seat. "Mom's here," I told Karen. Grandma sat down and lit a cigarette, and as Mom came in the front door, Grandma said, "It's about time." Later that day, instead of paying us, Grandma took us clothes shopping. She said we could have anything we wanted. Karen easily found an armful of clothes to try on and show Grandma, but I wandered around the store aimlessly. Grandma showed me a leather saddlebag purse and a brown belt. "How about these? These are nice." No, I don't like purses, and I already have a belt. You're so simple. It took me years to figure out that wasn't a compliment. Well, it seemed like all at once. The cousins got weekend jobs and cars of their own. I waitressed on Sundays. But when I could, after my shift, I stopped by Grandma's to say hi and to take Gus home. He only lived 3 miles from Grandma's, but as he got out of the car, he always handed me a few dollars. No, Gus, that's okay. It's for gas, Ike. And Ike, remember, take care of yourself, because no one else will. I know, Gus, I know. Gus let himself into his building. I turned my car around. The light went on in his apartment, and I slowly pulled up the long drive. Gus stood at his window with the light behind him, waving. I turned my dome light on so that he could see me waving too. I moved away to go to school here at Central, and I met my husband, and we bought a home here in Mount Pleasant. Just after our first child was born, Mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. She was only 48. She had the treatments and the surgeries. 2 years later, she died. Now, my sisters and I sat with Mom the week before she died. My husband coordinated time off from work with my mother-in-law so that our 18-month-old would have some consistency while I drove back and forth with our nursing 3-month-old from Mount Pleasant to Grand Rapids. The day after Mom's funeral, I was exhausted and numb. I got the kids down for a nap, and I called Grandma. She started crying. I choked back my tears. Grandma stopped crying, and she said, "Now, who's going to take care of me?" A train roared in my ears. My heart pounded in my throat, and the reasserting tendrils of manipulation and control over another reached through the phone and around my neck. And I said words I didn't know belonged to me until that moment. "Well, I don't know, Grandma. Maybe it's about time you started taking care of yourself." "You little shit." She hung up on me. Harsh words. That time with Gus in Grandma's kitchen created a world between swirling chaos and my walks. A place where dirty dishes, steaming hot water, and dish soap filled more than a kitchen sink.
Cool. It would make me feel pretty. Well, excuse me. I've been volunteering at the Gladwin Elementary School since 2004 as kindergarten through 2nd grade building on him. And I like to tell stories that often that come from books that the kids have available at the library to encourage them to go and find the book and to read it, since I'm not showing them the book or the pictures. But I think more important, I try to find stories that I think the kids can relate to. And so I came up with a story that I found quite a few kids relate to, and some others not at all. It's called I Hated Math. When I was in grade school, I hated math. I didn't find it too difficult, just boring. Every day we had to do a million addition problems, or a million subtraction problems, or a million problems of whatever it was they were teaching us at the time. I understood how to do them after doing the first 5. Why did I have to do a million more? It just didn't make sense to me. I grew up on a farm near Owasso, Michigan, not real far from here. And I attended the Rush Center School. Rush Center was a one-room schoolhouse. Kindergarten through 8th grade were all in that one room with only one teacher. Well, being in that environment made it even harder for me to focus on my math assignments, which I didn't want to focus on anyway. It was much more interesting being able to hear what Mrs. Snyder, our teacher, was teaching the older kids. And I have to admit, I like to daydream a little, sometimes more than a little, and I often had trouble getting my assignments done on time. One day when Mrs. Snyder called my class to come up to the table and chairs she had by the blackboard, where she would assemble each class to go over their assignment, I was only about half done with my math problems. Now when we were checking our papers for the correct answers, she usually didn't let us check our own paper. We had to pass our paper to the person next to us. And I knew that if I passed my paper to Marie, she would certainly tell Mrs. Snyder that I hadn't done all of my problems. But this day, Mrs. Snyder said we could check our own papers. Could I be in luck? As she started reading off the correct answers, I kind of put my arm in front of my paper, hoping she wouldn't notice that I hadn't done all the problems. She read off all the correct answers, asked if there were any questions, gave our assignment for the next day, and dismissed my class as she called the next one up to her table. I did it. I got away with it. I didn't have to do all those problems. I was feeling kind of smug until recess. It was a nice, warm, sunny day, and as she dismissed the kids to go out and play for recess, she called my name and told me to bring my math paper to her desk. Busted. All I could do was hang my head. It kind of hurt when she said she was disappointed in me because I really liked her. But then she made me go back to my desk and finish that assignment. That made me hate math even more. No one wants to miss recess. And then, to make matters even worse, she gave me additional problems to take home and have done for the next day. I lived on a farm. I had chores to do after school. I didn't want to have to do math homework. But after dinner, my parents told me to sit down at the table and get those problems done. I was having a terrible time. It was taking me forever to do those problems, maybe because I spent more time counting how many I still had to do instead of just doing them. But then my little sister came by, and Jean is 4 years younger than I am. So when I was in the 6th grade, she was in the 2nd grade, and she asked what I was doing. I said, I've got to do this dumb math homework. And she wanted to see how it was done. So she sat down next to me, and I explained the problem as I did it, and she found it quite interesting, wanted to see more. So I explained each problem as I did it, and it seemed in no time I had the assignment done. Well, Jean really enjoyed math and found it interesting. So anytime that I had math homework after that, she would sit with me, and I'd explain each problem as I did it, and in no time I'd be done with the assignment. Well, Jean not only found it interesting, but she understood how to do those problems as well as I did. So I got an idea. Yes, Jean could do my math homework for me. She was willing, but my parents didn't think that was a good idea, not to continue doing my own math problems. I never learned to love math, but with the help of my little sister, I got through it okay. Now, Jean went on to the University of Michigan, where she majored in math and became a math teacher. But I have used my daydreaming skills to become a storyteller.
This is how the pig came to stay at my my house. It was a warm and sunny day in the spring, and I was in the living room reading my book when the doorbell rang. I got up to answer it, and there on the doorstep was a pig.
Hello.
Hello, can I help you?
Is this your house?
Yes, this is my house.
It's a big house.
Yes, it is.
Is this your yard?
That is my yard.
Lots of grass. Hey, was that a deck I saw on the other side of your house?
There is a deck over there.
That's nice. What about the inside? Do you have more than one bathroom?
Yes, we have more than one
Oh,
bathroom.
that's good. And bedrooms? Do you have lots of bedrooms upstairs?
There are enough bedrooms.
Oh, that's good. You have a lot of bookcases.
I have a lot of books.
I like your house.
Thank you.
Can I come stay at your house?
No.
But the monkey stays at your house.
Well, I know, but the monkey is really very useful. Every day he washes the dishes and dries them and puts them away. Can you do that?
No, but I am very handsome.
Indeed, you are a handsome pig, but you still can't stay at my house. Goodbye. And I shut the door. On Tuesday, it was cold and rainy. The monkey and I were in the living room reading our books when the doorbell rang. I got up to answer it, and there on the doorstep was the pig. Hello,
Hello.
can I help you?
What about a basement? Does your house have a basement?
Yes, it does.
Oh, that's good. Basements are important, especially when there are storms. I do like your house.
Thank you.
Can I come stay at your house?
No.
But the parrot stays at your house.
Well, I know, but the parrot is really very useful. Every day she answers the telephone and takes messages. Can you do that?
No, but I am handsome and very charming.
It is true that you are handsome and charming, but you still can't stay at my house. Goodbye. And I shut the door. On Wednesday, it had stopped raining, but it was still cold and cloudy. The parrot, the monkey, and I were in the living room reading our books when the doorbell rang. I got up to answer it, and there on the doorstep was the pig.
Hello.
Hello, can I help you?
What about your backyard? Does your backyard have a swing set and a sandbox?
Well, there are a swing set and a sandbox in the backyard.
Oh, good. I like a swing set and a sandbox. I like your house a lot.
Thank you.
Can I come stay at your house?
No.
But the giraffe stays at your house.
I know, but the giraffe is really very useful. Every day he reaches up and he dusts off the high ceiling fans and the cupboards and the bookcases. Can you do that?
No, but I'm handsome and charming, and I have a winning smile.
I agree that you are handsome and charming, and that is a winning smile, but you still can't stay at my house. Goodbye. And I shut the door. On Thursday, it had warmed up, but it was still cloudy. The giraffe, the parrot, the monkey, and I were in the living room reading our books when the doorbell rang. I got up to answer it, and there on the doorstep was the pig.
Hello.
Hello, can I help you?
What about your kitchen? I think you should have a really big kitchen.
It's big enough.
That's good. I like your house so much.
I know.
Can I come stay at your house?
No.
But the elephant stays at your house.
Well, the elephant is really very useful. Every day she uses her trunk to vacuum up the floors and the carpets and under the rugs. Can you do that?
No, but I'm handsome and charming. I have a winning smile, and I'm very well spoken.
I agree that you are handsome and charming with a winning smile, and anyone can hear how well spoken you are, but you still can't stay at my house. Goodbye. And I shut the door. On the way back into the living room, I tripped over the rug. The elephant had been in to vacuum and she left it turned up. I landed hard and sprained my ankle. When I hit the floor, it startled the monkey, who had been dozing on the recliner with his book. He jumped up and landed on the floor next to the rocking chair where the giraffe was. The giraffe leaned over to see what was happening, and the rocking chair went right over the monkey's tail and broke it. The monkey yelled, and that scared the giraffe. The giraffe jumped up, got tangled in all his legs, and fell over into the couch. On the way down, he bashed his head first into the wall, and then into the parrot, who was perched on the arm of the couch reading her book. The wall made a big lump on one side of the giraffe's head. and the parrot's beak made a deep cut on the other side. The giraffe suddenly felt woozy and dizzy and collapsed into the couch cushions. When the giraffe's head hit the parrot, she went sailing through the air, feet first, right up the elephant's trunk. That's when we called the vet. When the vet came, she put the monkey's tail on a big red cast. She sewed up the giraffe's cut and put a Band-Aid on it and told him to lie down while he was feeling woozy and dizzy because he had a concussion. Then she took a look at the elephant's trunk. We couldn't see anything of the parrot sticking out, not even a feather, but we could hear her screeching and kicking around in there. The vet put on a long plastic glove and reached right up the elephant's trunk and told the elephant to blow hard at the same time. And that's how they got the parrot out. The elephant's trunk was sore and tender, so the vet packed it in ice and put it in a sling. The parrot wasn't hurt at all. She was a little gunky, and she'd been so frightened by spending such a long time up the elephant's trunk that she flew upstairs, took a shower, went to bed, and didn't get up until July. The vet very kindly wrapped my ankle before she left. On Friday, it was warm and sunny again. The elephant, the giraffe, the monkey, and I were in the living room reading our books when the doorbell rang. I didn't get up to answer it. I was in the recliner elevating my sprained ankle. The monkey didn't get up to answer it. He was in the rocking chair with several cushions, trying not to sit on his broken tail. The giraffe didn't get up to answer it. He was lying on the couch with a cold cloth over his head and a bucket nearby in case he felt sick. He was still pretty woozy and dizzy. And the elephant didn't get up to answer it. She was too busy sitting in the beanbag chair, poking her trunk in the sling to see if it still hurt and saying ow when it did. A moment later, I heard a voice coming in through the open window next to my chair. It was a pig. He found a lawn chair and dragged it around in front of the window and climbed up on it and was leaning on his elbows looking in.
Hello.
Hello, can I help you?
What happened?
I didn't answer the doorbell.
Oh, that's right. You didn't answer your doorbell.
No, I didn't. The pig looked at my sprained ankle, at the monkey with his broken tail, at the giraffe with his bandage in his bucket, and at the elephant sitting in the beanbag chair, poking her trunk in the sling to see if it still hurt and saying ow when it did.
I'm still wondering what happened.
I tripped.
Oh. Where's Parrot?
Upstairs, waiting for July.
I like your furniture.
Thank you.
I love your house.
I know.
Can I come stay at your house?
No.
But you need me.
How's that?
Well, I'm handsome and charming, I have a winning smile, and I'm very well spoken. I could answer your doorbell.
Indeed you can, pig.
Oh, goody!
The pig jumped down off the lawn chair, ran around the outside of the house to the front door and rang the doorbell. And then he ran back around the outside of the house to the lawn chair. He climbed up, scrambled in through the window, dashed across the living room floor, and came to a stop right in front of the front door. Standing up straight and in his most well-spoken, charming, smiling, and handsome manner, he said,
Good afternoon. Won't you please come in?
and that's how the pig came to stay at my house.
I'd like to welcome hypothetical fist fight up to the stage.
Hello, everyone. As said we are Hypothetical Fist Fight. We are a brand new improv group at Central Michigan University. We are a long-form improv group, and basically, to kind of give you the short version of what we do a lot of scenes. They're funny, and we make stuff up, but it's all based off of one suggestion, and then we improvise sometimes for 20, 30, 45 minutes based off of just one suggestion and generating all these different ideas. What we're going to do for you is a long-form set called an Armando, and we're just going to get one word from you that's going to inspire us. That word, and since this is Tellabration, it's all about telling stories. So we are going to kind of start by telling some stories from our lives inspired by the one word. So we'll get a word from you, someone will be inspired by that to tell a story, but then that story is going to inspire someone else to tell a different story. We're going to keep telling these stories until all of us have kind of shared a little bit more about our lives, and then we will see some completely improvised scenes based off of the ideas in those stories. So, we've heard a lot of stories about home and family, so why don't you, the audience, since we need a suggestion from you, think of a word that reminds you of home. Like when you think of home and just being home, what words come to mind? And you can just say them, don't have to raise your hand.
Food.
Food, that's a great one. Any other, what was that? Smiles. Smiles. Yeah, you know what? We'll go with smiles. All right? Smiles. Thank you very much. Smiles.
I've thought about my own smile in a lot of different ways as I've grown up. When I was a young child, I had a lot of confidence, more than I would ever have for the rest of my life. And so I didn't think about my smile ever. But then as I started to get into school, I started to kind of worry about how I looked a lot of times and how I was perceived. And so I would kind of like change my smile. One thing I thought of my smile was that like my lips were like too big. And so I would kind of like pull my lips back as I smiled for like pictures and stuff, and you kind of see it. It's an awkward smile.
Awkward pictures. I've taken a lot of awkward school pictures as a middle schooler. For some reason, I could never seem to translate the school photographer's directions correctly. He would always tell me to smile naturally, and it always came off very unnatural. In all of my school photos, my head is tilted too much at an angle, and I'm just kind of showing my teeth. I also had a bowl cut back then, so I was very just not good looking.
Misreading directions. So I had gone to Cedar Point with some friends back home, and we leave Cedar Point at the end of the day, heading home. I'm from Chesterfield, Michigan, so we put Chesterfield in the GPS and we start driving. It's at most a 4-hour drive. 6 hours later, we were very confused why we weren't home. And we're even more confused when we saw signs that said Pennsylvania as we were driving. Turns out we are one of many states with a Chesterfield, and we had just picked the wrong one and realized about 3 hours past our end destination.
Many states. So I'm originally from Oregon, and one time when I went back home after my freshman year, here at Central, I went home and I was hanging out with some of my friends, and we said, hey, let's rent a van and drive around the West Coast. So we did. We were able to explore not only Oregon, but California, Washington, Idaho, Nevada. And it was a really, really great time, but particularly one time we were staying, we thought we were going to be staying in a Walmart parking lot, because the Walmart, you're allowed to park wherever you'd like. We parked, and 5 minutes later there were 3 cop cars around our van. And a cop came up to the window and said, "You can't park here." And we said, "Yeah, we can, it's in the laws." And they said, "No, you really can't park here." And we were really confused. And what ended up happening, what we found out later, they didn't tell us that night, but we were looking things up. We found out that you can't park in a, it wasn't a Walmart building. We thought it was a Walmart building. It actually ended up it was like our version of Kroger.
Road trips. One summer with my family, we went on a road trip. There's 5 people in my family, me, 2 twin brothers, and my parents. And we also brought my cousins, so there were 6 of us in the car. We went on a road trip to Wyoming, and we drove the whole way. Yay, fun. So we were driving through the Dakotas and that area. I don't remember all the states right there. I'm good with geography, I just don't remember every single one of them right now. But we were driving through them, and they all looked dangerously similar. And I remember there was a point in the trip there were just like water towers and fields, and I started to get that opposite feeling of claustrophobia. Somebody told me what it's called, but I don't remember what it's called. And I was in the car and I was freaking out, and I was just like, when are we gonna see something? We haven't seen anything in at least 3 hours. I was just freaking out. It was so bad.
Water towers and fields. So, I know, it's a weird one. I grew up in the thumb of Michigan, which if you have not been there, don't. It's a nice place to grow up and raise a family, I'm told. But from my point of view, it was graduating classes of no more than 50 to 60 kids and just farms as far as the eye can see, which makes it sound like it would be harder to get into trouble. It's not. You just have to get more creative and you'll still get caught. Case in point, if you live in a small town and it's a night that kids like to go out and prank each other near Halloween, but you don't have a car to go drive and toilet paper people's houses, that's easy. If you live in a small town and you have a bicycle and a little trailer, you can do it. You'll get caught. We were caught almost immediately.
So, getting caught. Don't tell my mom, but I once broke onto a roof of a building with some friends to sit, watch the stars. It was prom night. And we had this genius idea. One of my friends had a candle, and on the front of the candle it said to keep cops away. And we were like, ooh, let's bring this candle and let's light it. So we lit the candle, and not 2 seconds after we lit the candle, the security guards came up and were like, hey, you can't be on this roof. And we were like, dang it, that candle didn't work. So.
Smiles. Awkward photos.
Misdirections.
Many states.
Road trip.
Water towers and fields.
Getting caught.
Wow.
So we're gonna take your picture
Okay.
right now,
All right.
and I just need you to look as natural as you can.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Are you posing?
No, this is my face.
You look like you're in pain. Are you in pain?
No, I'm great, man. I'm having a good time.
Okay, Are you upset? Am I upsetting you? I feel like you're about to cry.
No, that's just my face.
You look so. Okay. Look, are you that?
Got a royal flush. That's pretty cool, right?
This isn't a dating profile.
So fedora, no fedora.
It's for going in a yearbook. Your parents are gonna see this.
Oh.
I'm confused now.
Okay.
Sorry, you can't stand there.
Yeah, I think I can.
No, I'm quite certain you can't stand there. 2 steps back that way, 3 to the left, right. My left, your right, and then 3 that way. You can absolutely stand, but that square in particular, you can tell because there's a square made of tape. You cannot stand.
Oh, okay.
Don't stand so close to me. Ever hear that song? Don't stand, don't stand. Yeah, don't stand so close.
That stinks. Alright.
Yeah, sorry, man. Look, you're the one who said I got to design the hopscotch.
Oh, so.
Ideally you should be moving, not just standing.
Don't stand.
No,
Is that okay?
you were a little flat, but the rest of it looked really nice.
Jeez.
Well, I don't know. I thought it would be a fun kind of playground game if we designed our own hopscotch. Maybe I was wrong.
Yeah.
You only taped off 2 squares for 4 square. Now, I'm not a math major, but I'm pretty sure you need to tape off more.
Well, there's only 2 of us, so what would be the point of other 2 squares?
We're not going to get any more friends unless we have more squares. No one's going to see the 2 people playing 2 square and be like, hey, they look cool.
Hey, you guys look cool. Can I play?
Yeah!
Oh, how do I play? There's only 2 squares.
We can take turns, we can switch, we can rotate.
I guess.
Or we can make a 3rd square.
Yeah,
3 squares.
3 squares.
3 squares, that's good.
Let me just,
Okay. Alright.
So what happens if it goes where there's no square?
oh no.
Yes, all the money money in the register, please? I have this candle, cannot be arrested for robbery.
Look, I'm not gonna lie, I don't think that's gonna work.
Would I have bought it if it didn't work?
Hey, I heard there was a robber.
Gotcha. That's right.
All right, we're just taking your mug shot. I just need you to look natural. Are you peeing?
Just trying to look cool.
Oh, they needed the fedora.
Here. Thank you.
This isn't a dating profile.
Hey, I'm sorry. I've called every guy who works at the firm. It sounds like the get out of jail free card isn't a real thing. And if so, it certainly is not legally binding.
I spent $50 in game for that.
And we appreciated that. It went towards our nonprofit, but at the same time, you should know that these schemes just aren't working out. I mean, you're still in the handcuffs.
Yeah.
They let you out in handcuffs.
Yeah. I thought it was kind of rude.
I think you're starting to make people mad. I mean, the cannot be arrested candle, they clearly heard about the get out of jail free card, like...
Well, lucky I have my doesn't need to pay for lawyer fees candle.
Damn it.
Want to start a band?
Heck yeah.
All right, I got a guitar. First things first, I think our name should be Water Towers and Fields. I don't know about you.
Oh, yeah. I like that.
Yeah, totally. Seeing as my last name is Water Tower and your last name's Fields. So, what kind of genre are you thinking?
Well, let's, I think we should really play to like when you're driving like really long distances and like there's nothing around and you just start questioning your entire life.
Yeah, I'm listening to this new Water Towers and Fields album.
Oh yeah, what is it?
There's no sound. I can't hear anything. But like, I've turned my volume up.
Oh wow.
It's a great groove.
It's really nice.
All right, well, welcome to the concert, everybody. We're excited to guys. All right, and a 5, 6, 7, 8.
I know all the words to this one.
Yeah. It's my favorite song they have.
All right, I hope we're having some fun out there. All right, where are we all coming from today? Where are we all coming from?
Chesterfield.
Pennsylvania or Michigan?
Indiana.
Minnesota.
Indiana, Minnesota,
Texas.
Texas, all Chesterfield?
Yes.
Incredible.
Well, the documents are official. We've officially started our Chesterfield School. We only accept students from Chesterfields across the United States.
Oh, school of choice is going to be a nightmare. So the Chesterfield Charter, do you think that rolls off the tongue enough, or?
I like the alliteration. I don't know if I like the charter word.
The word charter itself, or what it represents in this?
See, I also have chartered internet, and I hate
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
them.
So,
Maybe the Chesterfield chunk.
I was thinking cheetah. They're both CHs. Neither of them are applicable.
That could be our mascot.
Chesterfield cheetah?
Yeah.
Oh, do these kids even know how to play sports?
I don't know. We should find out. Let's put together like an intramural softball team.
Oh, just like of Chesterfield kids across the country?
Now I'm gonna start filling out the forms.
To whom? This is a disaster.
Hey there, kiddo, ready for your haircut?
Yeah, I'm ready for a haircut.
All right. Sit down. You don't have a counter. Okay. Put the bowl on, okay?
Oh.
Easy.
Wait, I have a question.
Yeah.
What?
All right, yeah, haircut. All
Yeah.
right, let me just put on my blindfold. Get the buzzers.
Wait, I got a question.
Sorry, what?
I got a,
Yeah.
what?
All right, haircut.
All right, well, I'm good.
Is there a problem, officer?
Yeah, I'm not a cop. I saw saw you looking at my car real suspiciously, then I saw you start to slow down to the speed limit, and I said to pull you over with my sirens to let you know I'm not one of those guys. That's not my bag, you know.
Okay, I feel like you're a cop.
No,
You're kind
friendo.
of hitting all the. You called me friendo. That's a cop move.
I'm just a regular old blue-collar American.
You're really hitting all the cop notes for me.
What are cop notes, brosif? I'm one of the youths.
Oh boy.
You just say one of the youths?
Howdy doody, friend-a-rooney.
Yeah, we don't really know if we can use you as a substitute teacher here at Chesterfield Chunk.
Oh, come on, I was there when they invented math. I mean, very recently.
Okay, you're freaking me out a little bit. You
Oh,
know?
come on, bro.
Could you not? I mean, we're currently, this is an interview. This is a job interview, and
Yeah,
I
well-
don't really know if calling you brosif and bro.
I thought it was weird that we started standing. I thought maybe this would break the ice a bit. It's a very informal interview.
I know, but I just don't know if you're quite qualified to teach our youth, as you say.
Dad, seriously, you gotta stop coming in and hanging out with me and my friends. You're embarrassing.
You gotta chill out. I know all about what's down with the words.
Dad, nobody sits in chairs like that anymore.
What? Nobody told me. I watched Stand and Deliver last night. That looked cool.
Dad, it's not cool. It's not cool.
Can you teach me to be cool?
What? I couldn't hear you.
Can you teach me to be cool?
All right, so you want to take some cool photos? Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just. Oh boy, so you saw Stand and Deliver last night, didn't you?
Yeah, it's almost. It's a classic. You teach some calculus.
I haven't taken a picture like that in, I kid you not, 20 years.
Oh, you gotta have like a sepia filter on that thing.
Or I could just get the old photo booth where I have to like hold up the thing and there's a powder flash.
You guys still have that?
I was joking. That's how outdated you are. Now give me a natural smile. Oh my God. All right, that's our set. Thank you guys very much. It's been a lot of fun.
So when we got up this morning in Lansing, we had like 2 inches of snow. We were supposed to have light flurries, but it's that time of year. People are upset, but hey, it's winter, it's Michigan. We're gonna get snow. I know about snow, and I know about being cold. After when I was little, we grew up skiing with my dad and my brother. We'd go skiing often. And after I got out of college, I actually joined the National Ski Patrol at the Lansing Ski Club. Now, most people don't know there was a Lansing Ski Club, but we had a private hill that was actually a man-made hill because there aren't any very really big hills in Lansing. So they built this hill. They put a chairlift on it. You could ski on both sides and down the other side. It was a pretty decent little place to go. You'd go out for a couple hours in the evening or on a nice day. But the ski patrol, we had to be there basically, somebody had to be there when the place was open. And we would sign up for our shifts in September. And in September, when you're looking at the calendar and all those empty dates, you had to do so many daytime or evening shifts and so many on weekends. You'd be thinking, oh, surely this day will be one of those perfect days when the sun is shining and the snow is just wonderful. It's in the 20s, not too cold, just beautiful. And you'd be so optimistic when you put your name on all those places. Well, when the actual day came, it was usually 10 below with a high wind, or it would be 33 with rain, or something. I got to be known as the person who could pick the worst days of the whole year. It got so bad that when we're signing up in September, I would see people going along behind me, and if my name was where their name was, they erased their name and moved it to another day. But we hardly ever closed the place unless there was no snow, because the Lansing Ski Club was a place a lot of people dropped their kids off after school and picked them up at 10 o'clock, and they didn't want to hear that we were closed. So we'd be out there in all kinds of weather. So I was used to being cold. But the coldest I have ever been in my entire life happened on a beautiful, sunshiny October day in my favorite place in the whole world, up at Torch Lake. It's up north of Traverse City in the northwest part of the state. Beautiful big lake. And my parents bought a cabin up there the year I was born, so that's all I've ever known. And we were up there one day on this beautiful October day, and that was kind of unusual for us because we were mostly Memorial Day to Labor Day cottage people, and we'd close the cottage on Labor Day, and sometimes we went up for an occasional ski weekend, but usually we were just there during the summer, most every weekend in the last 2 weeks of August. But this year my dad had undertaken a construction project. He decided he needed a little more outdoor storage, so he built a carport with a shed built into the side. And like a lot of my dad's projects, it took a lot longer than he planned. So it didn't get done by Labor Day, and we were actually up there in October getting the last of the painting done. Now, hardly anybody else was up there at that time, like nobody else was up there at that time. It was really peaceful and quiet. But then we heard a car coming down the road, and our cabin is down a little hill. There's only one place further along the lake than ours. So we heard this car coming, and sometimes people would kind of get turned around and they'd come down, they'd turn around and go back up. But this car actually pulled into our driveway. So we all had to come out from behind the shed to see what was going on, and the doors opened up. And who should get out but my brother-in-law and his parents. Now my sister and my brother-in-law had been living in California for a few years, but he worked for Burroughs in Detroit. So he was often back for business, and this time he'd come, he had Friday meetings, he had Monday meetings, so he and his parents were just traveling around. They had some property up at Petoskey they wanted to look at, and he suggested they stop by the cottage to see. He hadn't been there in quite a few years. Well, after all the greetings were done, he kind of looks at me and says, "A beautiful day like this, I thought you'd be in the water." Well, being the smart-mouthed teenager that I was, I said, "I'll go in if you go in." He'd been living in California, it was soft. Well, he had an excuse ready for that. He said, "Well, I didn't bring my trunks." So I thought we were safe. But then my dad, the person who's supposed to protect his children, my dad says, "I have a pair you can wear." And you always have a bathing suit around the cottage. Busted, as Joe would say. The gauntlet had been thrown and accepted, and now we were both stuck with it. So we got into our suits and we went down on the dock, and that pleasant breeze that had been blowing just a few minutes before now felt like a gale out of the north as we stood shivering on the dock. And then my dad, the traitor that he was, counted us off. 3, 2, 1, and we both dove off the dock into that water. Well, I thought I was going to die. Torch Lake is cold from Memorial Day to Labor Day. It's a very large lake, 18 miles long. In places it's as wide as 2 miles, and it's very deep, 200 and some feet deep, spring-fed. So we always made fun of people who first stuck their toes in and thought it was cold. But in October, let me tell you, it's really cold. That cold water pushed every little bit of air out of my lungs as I sank down to the bottom. Now there's a legend that, like Lake Superior, Torch is so cold that if you drown, your body does not come back up to the surface. There's supposed to be a place somewhere on the lake where a team of horses was pulling logs across the ice in the winter, and they went through the ice, and if you go by and the wind and water conditions are right, you can see that team of horses still in their harnesses at the bottom of the lake. And I just had visions after my short and boring life had flashed before my eyes that people would be coming by in their boats and looking down and seeing my frozen body there at the bottom of the water. And then I put my feet down and stood up. We're in about 4.5 feet of water. Made our way back to the dock and climbed out and spent I at least spent the rest of the afternoon standing in front of the fireplace drinking hot chocolate and trying to get a little bit of feeling back into my limbs. So you'd think, after making and taking a foolish dare like that, I would have learned a lesson. But I'm sorry, Mom, but if all my friends made jumping off the cliff sound like an adventure and that it was going to be really fun, I'd be right out there with them. That explains some of the things I've done in my life. Things that no sane person would agree to, but it sounded like it would be fun. So there I was. But I can tell you this. If you're organizing a polar bear swim, I'll give you money. But don't ask me to go into that water, because that's one lesson I learned, and I will not go into cold water anytime after Labor Day.
This is a story that I heard from another storyteller, and it just struck a chord with me. It's a story about a good stepmother. In the story, it's called The Lion's Whiskers. Now, we all grew up with the Cinderella stories about the wicked stepmothers. And I volunteer at the Gladwin Elementary School, and there are a lot of kids with step-parents. And I know sometimes those kind of relationships can get a bit testy. So I wanted to tell a story about a good stepmother. Once there was a woman who lived in a small village in the mountains of Ethiopia. She had always wanted to have children, but in her young years, she spent taking care of her ailing mother. But now her mother was gone, and she was no longer young. And she was alone in the village where she had no relatives. She was past her childbearing years and wondered sadly, who would marry me now? Well, at the edge of the village was the well, where the villagers would go to get their water for their daily needs. And one day when she went to the well to get water, a merchant came by with this caravan of donkeys. He traveled from village to village buying and selling things. And he stopped to get water for himself and for his animals. And he and the woman exchanged greetings and went their own ways. Over time, they just happened to be at the well at the same time again. And each time they would talk a little bit more and a little bit more, and became quite friendly. And one day the man told her how lonely he was since his wife had died a few years prior. And she told him how lonely she was living in that little village with no relatives. The next time that they met at the well, he asked if she would marry him and moved to his home down in the valley. And he said that he hoped that she wouldn't mind that he has a young son. She was delighted. Now she wouldn't be lonely anymore, and she would have the child that she had always wanted. They did marry, and she moved with him down to his home. When she was introduced to the young son, she threw open her arms to embrace him. But he scowled and stepped back and said, "Leave me alone. You're not my real mother." "He's been so sad since his mother died," said the man. Then she said, "I will love him even more." The man traveled often, going off trading in the distant villages. And when he would leave, she would always make the boy his favorite meal. He would often just push it away and say, "That's not as good as my real mother." When she would wash and mend his clothes, he'd run through the brambles and tear them and get them dirty. When she would polish his leather shoes, He would walk through the mud at the edge of the river which ran by the village and get them dirty again. All day long, he would hide in the forest where she couldn't find him, only coming home at night to sleep. Often she would cry herself to sleep at night, wondering how she could earn the love of this boy. One day she decided to go and see the wise man who lived in a cave out at the edge of the village. When she got there, there was already a line of people to see him, and she had to wait her turn. When she came before him, she said, "Please, make me a magic potion that will make my son love me as much as I love him." The wise man thought for a little while and said, "I can do this, but you'll have to bring me some of the ingredients." "Anything," she said, "anything at all." And he told her, "You'll have to bring me 3 whiskers from the chin of the old lion that lives in the rocky desert across the river from the village." But the lion will kill me." "Perhaps you'll think of a way," he said, and dismissed her. Sadly, she walked back toward her home, wondering how she could ever get 3 whiskers from the chin of the lion. She pondered as she walked, and slowly a smile spread across her face as she came up with a plan. The next morning, she crossed the river and went out into the rocky desert. She saw the lion off in the distance, and when it caught scent of her, it raised its head and roared. Terrified, she turned and ran back across the river to her home. But the next day, she crossed the river again. This time, she took a quite large piece of fresh meat and went out into the desert. And again she saw the lion in the distance. When it caught scent of her, it raised its head and roared. When she was sure that the lion saw her, she placed the meat on a large rock, slowly backed away from it, and turned and went back across the river to her home. The lion sniffed the air and nervously approached the meat, looked around, and ate the meat. Every day for a month, she came across the river into the desert with a piece of fresh meat, and always, when she was sure the lion saw her, placed the meat on the same rock. And each day, she stepped back a little bit less and a little bit less, until finally one day, she did place the meat on the rock, and she did step back. She held the meat out in her hand as the lion approached. It opened its huge mouth, and she saw the big, sharp, white teeth as it took the meat out of her hand and began to eat it. And as it did, she reached down and rubbed it behind the ear, kind of like you would your house cat. Then she reached down and look, look, look. She had the 3 whiskers. The lion didn't even seem to notice. She backed away, turned and walked toward the river, and then she ran. She ran as fast as she could across the river, through the village, to the cave of the wise man. "I did it," she said, "I did it. I got the whiskers from the lion." He took the whiskers, looked them over, and threw them into the fire. "What have you done?" she said. Did I risk my life for nothing?" "You don't need a magic potion," said the man. "Treat your son the way you treated the lion." And he dismissed her. Slowly she walked back toward her home, wondering, what did he mean? Treat my son the way I treated the lion. And she pondered as she walked. And slowly a smile spread across her face as she came up with a plan. The next day, the merchant went off again, trading in the distant villages. And again, she made the boy his favorite meal. She put 2 bowls on the table, one for him and one for herself, and she put the food into the bowls. And she sat down to eat while he stood off in the corner, just watching her. She finished her meal, cleared off her plate, and went outside to do some chores. Only then did he come to the table to sit down to eat. But now the food was cold, and it didn't taste so good. She continued to do this, and slowly he approached the table and sat down to eat with her. At first he didn't say anything, but when she didn't say anything either, he started to talk to her, first about the weather, and then started telling her about some of the things he and his friends did during the day. And one day he said, "My friends have been teasing me because my clothes are torn and dirty and my shoes are all muddy. If you would clean them, I promise to take better care of them." And she did. And one evening, when he went to bed, he called out to her and said, "I'm scared. Would you please come tell me a story?" And she walked in and sat down at the edge of his bed and said, "Let me tell you about the time that I got 3 whiskers from the chin of a lion." "From a real, live, wild lion?" he said. "I'm afraid of lions." And she sang to him, "Hush, my darling, don't fear, my darling, the lion sleeps tonight." And he snuggled up next to her, not one to miss a single word. And that's the story of the lion's whiskers.
The summer my mother died, I made pie. Well, I made pie every summer. In my mind, the years divided into precisely 2 seasons. The fresh fruit summer pie season, which is short and intense, and the apple pie season, which lingers long, warm, and smelling of cinnamon. My mom taught me how to make pie, and by that I mean her pie crust. You can put anything in a pie, but my mom's pie crust, rolled so thin you could read a newspaper through it, was a miracle of flaky goodness. Not everybody can make that pie crust. I can make it. My daughter can make it. My brother, a good baker who had the same teacher, just can't. It may be, in addition to flour and shortening and water, you just might need magic pie fingers. If ever there was a hill of hubris that my mother or I or my daughter after me would die upon, it would be that pie crust. You might think, listening to this, that my mom was one of those mythical 1950s housewives, striving for culinary perfection, smiling and singing and wearing a strand of pearls as she dusted and vacuumed, putting her life aside for the needs of the husband and the children. But she'd be wrong. She was a young wife and mother in the 50s, but she did it her way. She was a good cook, and she kept a tidy house, but she didn't enjoy it much. Child rearing was her domain, not because it came easily or naturally to her, but because she wanted it, and she worked hard at it. Kissy huggies and warm fuzzies were just not a natural part of my mom's makeup. To know who she was, you have to see her through the eyes of my memory. Leaning up against a sand dune on the beaches of Oregon, wearing yellow pedal pushers and an old sweatshirt, reading a book, our well-traveled tent in the background. Chasing my dad uproariously through the house with a wet wash rag just because she could. Sitting with my brothers and myself in the encyclopedia, looking up concussion or tetanus or whatever medical term was appropriate to whatever trouble my brother had gotten into this time. Listening to me angst on about something that I'm giving way too much importance to, and advising me straight out of her current Zen Buddhist phase, try not to clutch. Telling me how she got propositioned by a sailor in the North Sea, and how my dad had laughed when she skipped around to the other side of the boat and told him about it. Hiking among the massive standing stones in Avebury, England, and pausing to put her hand on one just to feel the power of the earth, the wind blowing her orange rain poncho into a sail. Finding me huddled on the floor in tears, having hit the wall on the number of phone calls I could make, telling friends and family that my dad had died, gathering me into her arms, oh my dear, so that I might crowd up my grief on her shoulder. In these ways, my mom showed me who she was and taught me to be myself, so that I might teach my children in turn, in the way that strength and wisdom have been passed from parent to child, generation to generation, since before time knew what it was. Once upon a might have been, there was a bell, a magic bell, brass, the size of a child's hand. It made a pleasing ping-a-ping sound when it was rung, which was not very often because it lived up in the attic under the rafters. Sunny knew all about the bell. She found it up there one day when she was playing, and she brought it down to Mama. Ping-a-ping. Oh, I haven't heard that bell in years. You knew about the bell, Mama? Of course, I put it up there in the attic before you were ever born when we first bought this house. Where did it come from? I got it from my mother, your grandmother. She got it from her mother across the sea, who got it from her mother, who got it from hers, and back and back. As long as we keep our bell safe, it will help bring tranquility into our home. So my mother said to me, and her mother said to her, from parent to child, generation to generation, since before time knew what it was. And one day the bell will be yours. But what's tranquility, Mama? Oh, Sonny, tranquility it's like when you're curled up on a couch on a winter afternoon to read a book, and Miss Kitty jumps in your lap, and she walks around and around, and she settles down and curls in and closes her eyes, and she purrs and purrs. That's tranquility. Well, Sunny liked the bell and the idea that it would one day be hers. Sometimes she brought it downstairs to play with. She might pretend there was a big storm with wind and rain and floods. She'd ring the bell and then help her teddies to high ground on the couch. Tranquility was restored. Sunny returned the bell to the attic. Or she might pretend a big fire, and she'd ring the bells and help her teddies to safety in the pond, which was actually the bathtub. Tranquility was restored, and the teddies were hung out to dry. Sunny returned the bell to the attic. Sometimes it was just that her teddies couldn't get along, and she'd sit with them on the couch for a long time, just ring the bell quietly, every now and then, ping-a-ping, until tranquility was restored. Sunny never forgot to return the bell to the attic. She loved that bell. She wasn't that happy with it, though, when Miss Kitty died. Miss Kitty was old and ill, and everybody said it was for the best, but Sunny was sad anyway. She brought the bell downstairs to Mama. What about the bell, Mama? It brings tranquility to our home. Isn't it supposed to keep bad things from happening? No. Bad things happen. That's just life. Bad things happen and good things happen. But our bell can help us make our way through those things to a place where it's peaceful and calm and we can just breathe. We can work on it together, she said. And she held Sunny tight and rang the bell. Ping-a-ping. Sunny grew up, as children will. Good things happened and bad things happened. She broke her leg on a trampoline. She learned how to sing like a nightingale. Her best friend in all the world moved away. She went to college, made a lot more good friends. Mama grew old and frail and had to go live in a nursing home, and shortly after that, Mama's house burned down. Sunny found her heart's partner and had a home and family of her own. Sunny made her way through life with Mama's support and quite a lot of strength and tranquility until Jojo was born. Jojo was a sweet child, and Sunny loved him with all her heart, but oh, he was hard. Everything he felt was right out on the surface. Happy was total ecstasy, and sad was black hole depression, and anger was red hot pain. It was It was like living in the boiling rapids of a swift river. It seemed like JoJo was always getting into trouble, not because he was mean or malicious, but just because he had to try everything. He tried Sunny's patience and her tranquility. Sunny went over to the nursing home one day to go talk to Mama, as she often did when she was frustrated with JoJo. The day before had been an epic JoJo day. First, there'd been a meltdown over the cornflakes at breakfast. Then a call from school. Not only had he forgotten his homework, he had pitched his backpack at his teacher. He was in tears when he came home from school because his best friend wouldn't sit with him on the bus. Then when he was getting ready for bed that night, he kicked his shoe off and it flew crash right through the bedroom window. Sunny found Mama sitting in the sunshine, listening to the birds, and she told her all about JoJo's epic day, and then she told her all about JoJo's epic day again, and about some other epic JoJo days. She cried a little on Mama's shoulder. Mama held her tight, stroked her hair. Mama didn't say much anymore these days. But she did say, "What about the bell?" "Oh, Mama, we lost the bell in the fire. We haven't had it for a long time." Mama just smiled, nodded, and looked at Sunny. Sunny thought. And on the way home, Sunny stopped at a shop. She bought a bell, a magic bell, brass, the size of a child's hand. It made a pleasing bing-a-bong when she rang it, and she brought it home to JoJo. "Look, JoJo," she said, "this is our bell. As long as we keep our bell safe, it will help bring tranquility to our home." So my mama said to me, and her mama said to her, from parent to child, generation to generation, since before time knew what it was, and now we have our bell. "But what's tranquility, Mom?" said JoJo. "We'd had another rough day." "Oh, JoJo, tranquility is like when you're feeling hurt or mad or sad, and you curl up on your bed, and Maggie Dog jumps up with you, and she wags her little tail, and she snuggles down in next to you, and you put your arm around her, and she just stays there, soft and warm, until you feel better. That's tranquility. Will it keep me from being mad or sad or hurt? No, that's just life. Good things happen and bad things happen, but with our bell, it can help us make our way through those things to a place where it's calm and peaceful and we can just breathe. We can work on it together," she said. She held JoJo tight. She rang the bell. Bing-a-bong. Sunny and JoJo put the bell up in the attic. It's still there. Sometimes JoJo brings it down to play with, and sometimes he brings it down and he wants to talk to his mom about something. Sometimes Sunny takes the bell and she brings it over to the nursing home and she rings it for Mama. Bing-a-bong, bing-a-bong. Mama smiles, nods, falls asleep in the sunshine. The summer my mother died, she knew what was happening long before I was willing to admit it. And she had begun that journey that dying people sometimes take, stepping away from the world, distancing herself from the living. I was in her home doing post-surgical, post-chemo, post-radiation care, and I couldn't get her to do the things I was supposed to get her to do. She wouldn't eat anything, she wouldn't drink anything. I was frustrated and frightened. And I went out on her deck and I called my husband Mark, and didn't so much talk to him as cry at him for a while. When I was done, I came back into the house. I was still crying. And I went over to my mom, and she looked at me. And my mom came back. She walked back that distance she had already traveled down that road that she was headed down, so she could be there when I needed her most, so that she could gather me into her arms and let me cry out my grief on her shoulder. She didn't stay. She couldn't stay. She died some weeks later in the care of her family who loved her and let her go. And my mom had had no use for the afterlife. She did not think that an undying part of her was going to be found at some other time on another plane of existence. And she was good with that. So am I. But still, there are times when I'm rolling out a pie crust so thin you could read a newspaper through it, that I lose track of who and when I am. I'm myself making a pie. I'm a mother teaching her daughter how to make a pie crust. I'm a daughter learning how to make a pie crust from her mother. I become unstuck in time and space and feel myself not alone in the universe, where life, like the fresh fruit summer pie season, is short and intense. But that which remains, my mother and myself, both of us and my children, that which remains lingers long, warm, and smelling of cinnamon. I want to thank you all for coming. You've been a great audience, and a whole bunch of you already have tickets for next year.
Yeah.